Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the This Week in Coworking podcast feed. I am your host, Hector Colonis, and I'm joined once again by the amazing Bryce Hill. We're going to dive a little bit more into Bryce's story, his lessons around sales, what he's kind of learned in coworking. But before we get into any of that, Bryce, how are you?
Hector, I am doing well. Thanks to have me again. Excited to be back.
Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
What I love most about these kinds of episodes is we really get to dig into you, your story, what you've learned, what surprised you. So let's start right at the beginning, Bryce. Like, no one, at least in our generation, woke up as a kid and was like, I want to get into co-working, right? Just wasn't a thing. So what was your co-working story? What brought you into this industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I found it by happenstance, right? I was new to Colorado at the time. I had been working a retail training job with a big region where I was driving all across the Colorado, Wyoming area and working every holiday, working every night, and just started thinking it's time to have a little bit more balance in my life. At that time, Office Evolution, the corporate offices for the franchise were based here in Colorado, and I found a community manager role at the Golden site. Shout out Angie at Stella Pop, by the way, because I found the role on LinkedIn on a Friday. I applied. I got a call from her like 4 minutes later asking me some questions, and we set up my interview with Stephanie Sigler. I started in co-working as a community manager at the space in Golden, which is still kind of my baby. It is still part of our Ohana network. I was really just drawn to this element of supporting businesses, building community. My parents are both entrepreneurs, so I had that kind of natural take to this customer base.
Mhm.
And I just loved the sort of empowerment that I was given that, oh, this is kind of like a one person show here. My team, Stephanie and the Office Evolution team, did a great job of allowing me to kind of make it my own. They provide you a framework. I think every community manager realizes this. You're going to have sort of an operational framework, you're going to have some metrics that you're being measured by. But the real key is to put yourself into it and put your heart into it. And that's what drew me to it.
That's fascinating. And so what year was it when you joined?
2018 was
2018.
when I started, and I was lucky. In 2019, I was the first GWA Community Manager of the Year at the GWA
Right.
conference in Washington, D.C. And so that's when I was like kind of validated, right? I'm like, okay, this is something I'm good at, something like I'm not just having fun, I'm also doing a good job. So that's kind of where it solidified for me.
So 2017 joined, 2018 awarded your first award. Then you went from community manager to sales. Like, what was that transition? What was that? Because obviously you were in sales before you came into co-working. What was that path from just community manager to a more defined role in sales?
Yeah, it's interesting. My sort of job path, I've stayed within one company. However, it's been three or four entities that have owned this group. So it's been interesting where my role continues to develop and has been very dynamic. I've been in an ops seat, I've been in a sales seat, I've been in a mixture of the two. And where we've landed now is in this sort of sales and business development role where I'm thinking about our sales from an outside visionary type perspective of like, what could we do different? Can we kind of
Mhm.
break the mold? How can we be ahead of the game on things? And we're not like doing anything that's rocket science here, but just constantly looking to evolve the office evolution in me, constantly evolving, what we do with our processes and not getting stuck in like a habit or a super specific path.
That's really interesting. So for folks who don't know, obviously Office Evolution and Venture X are both franchisees. Do you think that there's still enough flexibility to kind of define the sales, the products, the processes, or was it very, very rigid?
I think what has been interesting is there are a few groups within the United Franchise Group co-working vast sort of umbrella where they have multi-location operators or the groups of four or more sites.
Mhm.
And I don't know that that framework was super well developed at the time that we joined the vast family. And so what that allowed for was collaboration with Jason and Paula and the UFG team of, look, here's what I need. Here's how I need this to be able to work. We were the first group to bring on Unity AI, and there was some red tape to get through and get the HubSpot permissions or even the Outlook permissions that the franchisor was able to see, okay, yes, this is a tool that is going to be valuable, that perhaps has a more robust use case for other people in the network as well.
Hmm.
I think that because of our unique size and shape of our organization, it allows the UFG team to take into account things when we need this to work a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, that is really interesting. For folks who missed your last appearance here on the podcast, where you helped us co-host one of the weekly shows, tell us a little bit more, sort of small recap on the Ohana network and what it's made up of, just so people can get an idea of where you sit and what your role is in this group.
Our company name is Denver Coworking LLC, and we do business as Office Evolution and VentureX under the franchise. We have this group of 12 locations, all in one central metro area. In Colorado, we call it the Front Range, which is all along the eastern side of the mountains here. And so Denver co-working doesn't capture the fact that we're in Boulder or the fact that we're in Broomfield or Golden. And so we went with this phrase Ohana Network, Ohana being one of the original core values of the Office Evolution brand. And it really is just a simple way to explain we have this network of locations. You can cross brands in a way that typically you wouldn't be able to at this point. And so that's what the Ohana Network is. It's just our 12 sites here in Colorado.
Got it. And your role currently is Vice President of Sales.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. My job is to oversee a sales team responsible for basically all things revenue, responsible for growing the different revenue stacks within our business, looking for new opportunities to bring in new business, fill the funnels up. So I think it does capture what I do.
That's it. That's fascinating. And I know that I don't think I've ever asked you, but are you an owner or are you an employee? Like, where do you sit in the organizational structure?
Short answer, yes, I am a part owner in the group
Got it.
through, yeah, basically as my tenure goes on, I'll continue to be
Got it.
more and more of a chunk of the business.
So, as a leader of now a sales organization or sales team across multiple brands, let's start back in the beginning when you started dipping your toe in the kind of community manager side, coming from an external sales role. What surprised you the most about co-working specific sales?
Well, and it's developed over the years. You know, when I started, it was pre-COVID. And what I found then was many of the people that I was selling to were familiar or knew what they were looking for, right? They knew that they were coming in for a virtual office. They knew why they needed it. They knew why they were coming in for a private office and why we were a good option. And in this sort of post-COVID, what I've seen change is we're getting a lot more people who know a lot less. They're just hearing about it, right? Maybe they watched the WeWork show or read the book, or they have a friend who works from a co-working space that they went and met for lunch, things like that. So there's a little bit more now of like making sure in your sales process you're uncovering like how much does this person even know about what we do, and how do I uncover that without feeling like I'm interrogating them or
Mm.
or treating them like they're dumb. But it is still new to a lot of people what this is, or they have kind of an outdated mindset around what it is. Like, you know, maybe they had an executive suite back in the early 2000s or something like that, where explaining really the difference and this differentiator through your culture and your community and showing people what the value of that is.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's a very much part discovery, part education, but also as in trying not to make them feel uncomfortable, asking them too much about their business, asking them too much about the details. That sounds like something you learned on the job, like having done it wrong a few times, that you were kind of like, oh yeah, we should probably not do that. There's a famous comic on the internet where the person asks the client, well, why did you choose us over your competitors? And the client's like, I don't know. And then they walk out and they're like, you've got to stop asking that question. So it's sort of like that. But You also speak to a lot of operators, not only in the vast co-working group, but also at events. You're involved with a lot of organizations like Flock. As a sales leader, what is one thing that you think other sales teams are getting wrong about co-working sales?
What I have seen is people jumping into selling way too quickly and not taking the time to do due diligence, build rapport, get to know someone. We are in the business of selling a solution. And so if I'm going to present the best solution for you or the best solution that I have for you, I need to know what I'm helping you solve. I need to know what your pain point is or what's most important to you, what your motivators are. And so seeing people who just jump straight into here's our pricing, here's what you get, here's all of the amenities, when they're not taking the time to really uncover the needs, that I think is just the classic mistake.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely well said. I mean, we see it in every industry diving straight in. But then there's also this new shift, right? Where a lot of our products in co-working and flex have become very commoditized. They are becoming more on demand. Our end users are expecting that instant gratification. So how do you as a sales leader balance that? Someone just wants a desk. They don't want the 220 questions. They don't want to share discovery notes. They don't want to tell you what, they just want to book and come in. How do you balance that across multiple brands or, well, two brands, but multiple locations?
I'm actually going to go all the way back to my very first interview in person when I was interviewing for the community manager role. And a little bit of an embarrassing story, but I was driving across town. It was September in Colorado, which is usually a little bit warm. I was in a full suit and my AC went out in my car. So I'm driving to the interview, windows all down, hair everywhere. And I just immediately I saw Stephanie's face and she was just like, whoa. And so but what I took away from that and has kind of been a reflection throughout my career is you have to kind of mirror people and you need to kind of meet them where they are. And so picking up on those cues of, okay, I'm a little loud for the space right now, and kind of going back to reset. It's the same thing with how we're selling today. We need to sell sold.
Mhm.
So we need the self checkout option. We need the option where people can go and look at pricing and see the floor plan and get a walkthrough of the space without ever talking to a person. Where we can take an hour to show someone the space and we can measure the walls with them and we can show them the different desks and really talk about every little thing. And just the same thing, we need sales ability on the weekends and at night and on the holidays. You have to be able to sell to everyone and how they want it.
Yes, I mean that's a fantastic way to look at it because you're also kind of bringing that humanness to the solution, right? Meeting people where they are and just really being clear about the fact that even your ICPs, like your ideal customer profiles, they also have different needs at different times, right? You will have that remote worker who does want a full-time desk and looks like this and has this kind of characteristics. But that same person may need a meeting because their internet just clonked out or the kid's home from sick or so really kind of structuring your sales funnel. You can't just rely on ICPs anymore. You have to think about the actual use case. Airbnb kind of shifting away from where do you want to stay to? What do you want to do? Are you looking for
Mhm.
activity based? Are you looking for rest? Are you looking for quiet zones? And we're starting to see that proliferate across our industry as well. And that obviously brings me to the topic I love digging into, and that is the tech side. What does the sales stack look like in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, so I've referenced it a few times. So we do have an AI sales agent. His name is Ollie, named after my dog, using the Unity platform. And Ollie is there to answer basic questions. He knows our inventory, he knows our pricing, he can provide links to self-checkout. So if someone does want to book a meeting room, he can provide them with that. If they want to book a tour, he can schedule that for them. We use HubSpot for our deal management and our pipeline management and to kind of review our marketing efforts, keep track of our successes and what's working and what's our ROI on what we're spending on our marketing and what's our all of the useful information of your deals. We use Yardi Cube as our CRM. And so that's where we're doing most of our revenue. And then, of course, I mean, you name a third party. aggregator, whatever you want to call them. I'm on Liquid Space, I'm on Flex Space, I'm on anyone who wants to sell my stuff for
Mhm.
me and bring people to their website. I want to be there.
Yep. I'm always fascinated to discuss with sales orgs is you're used to thinking in commissions, right? You're used to thinking, well, this is a lead that I wouldn't have got. I'm willing to pay for the lead. I'm willing to pay for the click and wait. What do you say to folks who are like, the aggregators are taking too much of the dollar for the work they do?
Yeah, I would rather get a chunk of something than get nothing of nothing, right? So there are customers out there that have to use the Liquid Space platform. They have to use Gable, have
Mm.
certain things within that. And I'm sure there is a model out there where you can sustain on organic, referral, direct clients.
Mhm.
But I think there is a tipping point at some scale where you really need to consider that additional revenue. The other piece of it is the like Matt Weiner from Liquid Space. Weiner?
Yep.
Matt Weiner? Matt from Liquid Space. He's out there selling. All I have to do is answer some questions for him, and he's going to the client and sell. So it's like it's an extra sales team that you would be silly not to leverage.
Yep. That's a very good way to see it. It is that external force, especially when you look at the enterprise or you look at the on demand, especially if you can't be selling everywhere, because we're seeing this huge shift, right? The storefront is changing in front of our very eyes. It used to be, Google search, then it became very quickly Google Maps, and then all of a sudden ChatGPT came out of nowhere and people started talking to their search results. And then you're now seeing AI browsers with, Comet, Cursor, etc., all kind of coming into the fray. And it's like, well, if you don't have the capabilities to sell through these new channels, are you leaving money on the table? Is the rapid change of technology something that stresses you out or keeps you up at night? Or are you like, we'll figure it out?
I'm a we'll figure it out kind of person. I like to, at the much to the chagrin of my associates that I work with, I'm an early adopter. Like I'm anytime, would you like to be a guinea pig? I'm like, absolutely. Yes, I want to be early. I want to try it. I want to break it. Let
Mhm.
me get in there and tell you all the way. Like I think when you are a later adopter, you end up sort of being shoehorned into the way that things are set, where when you can come into something as an earlier adopter, you can provide your feedback in a more direct way that maybe you're teaching this platform or this software or this person something that they hadn't thought about. Most people that are providing some sort of software or automation are not also operating a space. And so my perspective is important because I want to get in there and give them my feedback so that it's more likely to work how I want it to work.
That's a great way to look at it as someone who has run spaces and also supports operators and sales teams like yours. I totally get that feedback loop. It's so important. And a lot of the teams that I've worked with or have pitched over the last year, they're like, we'll join when everyone else has. But there are benefits to coming in early. So we are always cheerleading and supporters of folks like yourselves who are the early adopters and allow us to really innovate around what does the stack look like, but also what's on the frontier? Like, where is the puck going? What could we look at there and know that, we might waste a couple of hours, but we've learned something. We've brought something back to the industry and we've shared it, which is just, I'm very, very thankful for folks like you who dive in early. Put it that way.
I think for me, like to your point, like yeah, we might have wasted a few hours or we may have wasted some time. I'm okay with that if it's my time. Don't want to waste my customer's time, right? Or my potential customer's time. I don't want things to be clunky for them. So I am a little bit more protective of things that are hitting um
Mm-hmm.
outside than I am on like if it's internal, I think we mentioned this before, like sometimes it does feel like you're plugging and unplugging things together behind the scenes. As long as to the public, it feels seamless. It doesn't
Yep.
matter how this is something that we're working on with my group right now is, we've decided we're going to allow people to use their conference room credits across our two brands. So the Ohana network is truly all inclusive. If whatever you sign up for there, use it everywhere within our group. And my immediate question was, well, how are we going to do that? And the response is, well, for now, we're going to do it manually. We'll figure it out. Hey, let's find out if people are going to use it. Like
Yep.
before let's put it out there and see if there's value and people want it, because
Yes.
we could be saying no to something that's very valuable to people, or we could be stressing about something that no one actually, or very few people really use.
Yes, the over-engineering dilemma is something that we see constantly, and it brings us over to the topic of automation, right? Like, should everything be super integrated and speak to everything? Yes. Does it all need to be done tomorrow? No. It's one of the first queries we get from very stressed out people in teams where they're like, we have to input all this thing. Like, okay, what is the number one benefit? What makes the experience better for the end user? Let's start there and then work backwards. As you go through this a few times, you get to the point where the new priority is no longer the tenant experience, because that is all a well-oiled machine. You then get to the operator experience, and that is where the real value lies. But you can't start with that, right? You can't make your team's lives easier if you're doing 3 extra clicks or 3 different apps or 2 logins for your end user. You have to start there and move backwards towards that, the golden ideal of a place where your team can just use one app, everything else stays in sync, and you only have to train on one system. That is what everyone's aiming for. But you can't start there. So it's great to hear that. Tell me a little bit more about your automation setup. Obviously, you have these different setups. What are you using behind the scenes to kind of make that a little bit easier?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, it never feels like there's enough, right? You bust your butt to make something more seamless or automated where it's less manual, but there's 10 other things that create along the way that become manual. My team is currently implementing Notion as a sort of database. We're hosting all of our resources in Notion, where the goal is kind of, if something needs to come to an outside, a third, a fourth resource, at least it's held in a centralized place. And, we are trying to now implement onboarding for our customers into Notion and have some automations built in that will allow for, I don't even know if the goal is truly like a seamless onboarding
Hmm.
experience. It's a predictable and repeatable, which then becomes scalable onboarding experience. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the key kind of automations that we're working on. I mean, that's kind of it right now. It's a
Yeah.
big lift for
Yeah.
Katie on my team and Nicole and Gary on my team. They're all working like months on building
Mhm.
out this process. Now, the other piece of this is we would love to have some automation between some of our resources like FlexSpace, talking to HubSpot, then talking to Cube, and things like that. And I know that that's coming. Yardi has a new version that'll be coming out, I think, shortly. And I think that will allow for better automation and at least talking between. But, right now, if I close a deal, I'm going into HubSpot, I'm manually marking it one, I'm then manually putting that information into Yardi. And so
Mhm.
that is something I'm really looking forward to automating is, you know, I can't stand to do the same thing twice. I can't stand, I would love to be able to just do one and done.
Yep. Oh, we're definitely getting there, and we're seeing across obviously the entire ecosystem is getting to that point. But as always, you're approaching it in the right way. You're starting with end user experience. What I'm most fascinated about the idea of bringing in Notion is this whole idea of no code and where does it sit in our organization. When your teams can create their own dashboards, they can create their own views, they can create their own webhooks, integrations, that kind of stuff. It is a huge part of the industry that no one is really talking about, because it's the next generation who are going to bring this and be like, well, why do I have to use this app? I can code up my own interface. Just give me the API permissions and I can do it. And you're seeing this pushback between the old school IT heads and this new generation of workers who want to no code everything. And how do they play together? Is just a fascinating conversation that I'm thinking we should discuss on a panel one day. What does the future of interfaces look like? Before I let you jump out today, Bryce, you've obviously learned a lot and you've had a lot of successes and a lot of wins in the sales organization that you've built. What is the one thing that maybe you've gotten wrong that you want to kind of give as a pro tip to other operators or sales leaders listening to this?
Yeah, I think Sophia and others had a great panel about branding and branding for growth. And I think for me, my key takeaway from that panel at GWA was to filter everything through the lens of your brand. Earlier this year, we rolled out some new co-working and virtual office plans, and we did that also with Sophia. We did some market research, we looked at competitors, we looked at the market, and I think what we developed was really a great product mix. We then went to all of our existing clients and said, "Hey, we're putting you on this new thing." And we didn't think about the fact that we had completely lost sight of who we are. There was no ohana to that. Just, "Hey, we're kicking you off the thing that you've had for years." Some people didn't even realize they still had it, but they like to have it just in case they need it, type thing. And the feedback was horrible. I mean, people were like, I won't say the name, but they're like, "We came to you from another brand that felt like there was no human touch. There was no consideration for who I am as a customer." And they're like, not comparing us directly to them. And we
Hmm.
immediately said, "Oh crap." Katie and I worked together, put out some communication to our members, basically saying, if you like the plan you're on, keep it. We're going back on our word here. Go ahead and stick with what you've got if it works for you. We have this great new product mix that we think is great for people coming in. But for folks that have already been with us, we have members that have been with us 10, 12, 15 years that are on like some sort of unique co-working virtual office plan, meeting room plan, whatever, that no, I don't want to sell it today. The economics aren't as good for us, which is part of why we updated the product mix. But again, to sum up the mistake was we didn't look at how it was a reflection of us. We looked at what we were trying to accomplish, which was to simplify our plans, have everyone on the same things, all of that. But to not take a second and reflect on how it's going to reflect on us was a huge mistake. I will say we put out an email completely eating the crow, and the response was fantastic. People were like, "I'm never going anywhere else. You have made right by me." There were people who even said, but I still think that this email is huge. Like, thank you so much for putting this out. This
Hmm.
speaks volumes about who you are."
Yeah.
That sort of transparency, honesty, and like not being afraid to say, "We did it wrong. Sorry, and we'll make it
Yeah.
right."
I love that. And I think it's a fantastic point to end. You definitely learned to put it through the lens, but you also learned to eat humble pie, to be like, look, we got it wrong. We did wrong. Let's make it right. And I think it paid off in dividends afterwards. A great lesson for everyone listening in to put that through the lens and always sit from the customer's experience. Be like, how would I feel to receive this email if I was the oldest member in the space, if I was the newest member in the space? What does that look like and how does that feel? Bryce, as always, thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing so openly and so honestly. It's really hard to come out into the global stage and be like, hey, I got this wrong. So thank you for bringing that to us and sharing. Where can we find you next in real life?
Come out to Denver. GWA next year will be in Denver. So I hope that you'll come out and see some of my spaces. Otherwise, you'll probably find me on different webinars and out in the ethos out there. Of course, I always love a LinkedIn connection from anyone in the industry here. But yeah, thanks again for having me a second time here. And it's always great to chat with you.
My pleasure. And we'll definitely drop your link in the show notes. Please connect with Bryce, learn from each other. This is what the whole point of This Week in Coworking is about, to elevate voices, to elevate opportunities, but to also elevate insights, right? What we get wrong allows us all to do better. So thanks again for listening. We'll be back in your podcast feed shortly. Take care and look after each other.